Hey guys, in this video we will talk about world's first hydrogen-powered train, avatar music idol, climate-friendly toilet, underwater fish drone. The future of environmentally friendly travel might just be here, and it's Germany that's leading the charge with the first ever rail line to be entirely run on hydrogen-powered trains. The trains are emission-free and low noise with only steam and condensed water issuing from the exhaust. They have a range of 1,000 kilometers, meaning they can run for an entire day on the network on a single tank of hydrogen. The trains can go at a maximum of 140 kilometers per hour, but the regular speeds on the line are much less, between 80 to 120 kilometers per hour. Korean startup specializes in the production of 3D content in real time. It recently announced a partnership with Sony Music Solutions in Japan to develop Apoki's career internationally. It is much easier to take care of the musical career of an avatar. They are much more docile and malleable than their real counterparts. Like all virtual idols, Apoki is built to adapt to the expectations of her fans, which speaks to a true paradigm shift in the essence of what an artist is today. These digital pop stars are only the most visible aspect of a key trend in the entertainment industry. The technology that creates them, artificial intelligence, is increasingly being used in the domain of music creation. Lastly, Samsung has revealed that it is working on a major project to reinvent the toilet in collaboration with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. For the moment, the project takes the form of a prototype capable of recycling its waste. The idea is to be able to market this type of toilet one day, especially in countries where clean water is scarce. The energy-efficient prototype, which doesn't need to be connected to the sewage system, has been in development for 3 years. The prototype incorporates various technologies designed to eliminate all traces of pathogenic elements present in stool, which are potentially dangerous for the environment. The system also allows for the complete recycling of treated water with auto-purification of liquid waste. Here's something else for you to think about. Earlier this month, China's Navy announced its new Robo-Shark, a military marine drone capable of operating at high speeds with a low sound for exploration and anti-submarine warfare. At first glance, one would think it's a real one. The company plans to sell Robo-Fish to aquariums at home and abroad, hoping to save endangered fish by reducing marine life investments. On top of protecting marine creatures by keeping them in the ocean where they belong, aquariums can use the robot fish to interact with tourists. It also adds an exciting element of science and technology to the fish tank. However, can a robotic fish save endangered marine life? In summary, Germany launched the world's first hydrogen-powered train. The innovation of avatar artists is set to drastically shift the essence of the entertainment industry. Climate-saving toilets were developed for third world nations where water is soon to be a scarcity. Underwater fish drone innovation will curb commercial aquariums from exploiting endangered marine life. Hey Jan, and welcome to season 2 of our Digital Insight podcast. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. I'm happy to be here and looking forward to looking at where Industry 4.0 is taking us, Hannah.
That's great to hear. And given that you're in Europe right now, I want to start my first question with the innovation from Germany. So they're coming up with the world's first hydrogen-powered train. What are your thoughts on that? And what are your thoughts on Germany coming up with innovation?
Well, I think it's very exciting. I think we want to see that kind of heavy industrial innovation taking us forward into Industry 4.0. There's a lot of debate about whether hydrogen is the right way forward or not. Is it really actually more efficient, especially the manufacturing process around hydrogen? But that being said, I think it's often important to just make progress with innovation. In the beginning, petroleum-based cars weren't better than horses, but it turned out to be a good idea, I think. I think we're all good to have been driving petroleum-based cars now rather than riding horses. So especially when technology is in their early nascent stages, I think it's about giving it room to breathe. And I think that's why it's a really great example of making that leap into Industry 4.0. And so running on a clean technology like hydrogen is a great leap forward. And I think it's important for Germany as well to, what's been happening, I think, in Europe, especially with the Ukraine war, is just a waking up, right? We're now facing an energy crisis. We have war on the continent since World War II. We have serious energy crises. This has really shocked the European people, and I think it's kind of woken them up out of their perfect dream. I think living in Europe is really like living in their perfect reality in many ways. So it's kind of awakening people, and that's important because when we awaken to our suffering, we can start doing start doing something about it and start creating innovation. So I think that this coming to fruition, it must have taken a lot of time, money, investment, persuasion, a lot of people behind it. So it's not just seeing the product of the technology itself, but that how much is behind it and where that will take us, right? What's the mindsets that have been changed towards embracing this new technology? What are the new investment funds that have been set up to fund the technologies that make this possible? What are the new political allegiances that have been forged to make this possible? You know, big industrial infrastructure like this takes a lot of political support as well as financial and technological support. So I think it's overall really exciting. Is it the final truth? Is it the answer? I don't know, but I don't think that's really the point. I think it's a step into Industry 4.0, and by taking those steps, you can then take many more steps. And so I'm thrilled to see it, to be honest.
Okay, and then given that Germany is one of the leading car manufacturer in the world, right? What would you say about them producing a hydrogen-powered train? What does that say about their car industry?
Well, I guess you have interesting things in Germany, for example, when you want to go skiing, which is very popular for Germans, they will drive their car onto a special, I'm not quite sure what the right word here is, but like car train. It's basically, you drive your car onto a train, and then the train all drives down to the Alps, and then you drive your car off the train, and then you go drive to your skiing destination. So it's not, I don't think Germans see it as a sort of either or solution. It's different solutions for different needs. And so I think that ability to combine them is really powerful. I was just in Berlin last week, and I'm amazed at the ability to have this sharing form of transport. Is just wild. You can just get into a car that you've booked on your app, and then you drive that car and you drop it off anywhere you want in the city, and then you just get out, and then you can instantly jump onto the electric scooter that's parked next to the car, and then you drive that somewhere else, and you get off, and then you jump onto the little that around, and it's this sort of completely new vision of mobility where you just, as and when you wish, these things just materialize. And the final note I want to say is not just in Germany, but here I'm in the UK now. You know, just driving down, for example, from the airport down to the south coast in England, 20-30% of the cars are electric now. The revolution is much more advanced than I thought it would be, and it's cool. It's cool to drive electric. You're not as cool if you're driving a combustion engine. There's been a fundamental change. You can feel that in the design aesthetic and the way people present themselves, and the way that, you know, in the capital of Berlin and in the coolest areas, you have electric car companies set up like Polestar. You have electric bicycle companies like Cowboy, who are sort of the Apple stores of transportation, shall we say. And so you can really see, not only is the revolution in place, not only has it arrived, it's in full swing and is well underway. So, you know, definitely before 2030, the majority of cars being sold, and I think the majority of cars and transport forms on the road here in Europe will be electric, and I think that's a great thing. If only because the reduction in the emissions, I think, is really powerful. I think that's going to be one of the great benefits. The carcinogenic and toxic effects of burning all those combustion engines, especially diesel, which is very popular in Europe, is really, really, really bad, and it's really, really dangerous. And so switching to electric cars, even though there might be question marks about how environmentally friendly is it to mine all these rare earth materials versus extracting them via oil, for example, or energy sources via oil. Is making batteries cleaner than extracting oil? I don't know is the answer to that question. But an electric car driving around my city is much cleaner than a combustion engine driving around my city. And I think that's a very important differentiation, not only for our own health, but for also the health of those who are vulnerable, and also those who are younger in their lives, right? So I think we're going to see a complete shift in the quality of living in cities because of this. And also, of course, the heat engine effect, right? In Malaysia, if you have a lot of, or any hot country, right? If you have hot cars, which are absorbing energy, so they're already hot ovens in their own way, then you have the air conditioning running, then you have the combustion engine running, it heats up the city. So if you have a couple of million cars in the city, those are all heat engines that are creating a massive heat island effect inside the city, and in turn making that city much hotter, which in turn requires more cooling. But the irony, of course, with more air conditioning is that you're heating up the outside whilst cooling the inside. And so you get these very difficult challenges around cooling, and especially as global warming advances, I think that will become more and more in effect. Maybe not so much in Europe, right? But in warm countries, that's going to be really, really important.
But I got to say that, it is exciting to be in this era where we are seeing a massive shift of people going into electric vehicles, right? And we see all the news coming out and more companies are going into it. So I think that for me, that's exciting to be in this kind of era. So then my next question is about Korea. South Korea is now going to launch the musical career of an avatar. So instead of dealing with all the K-pop and the management of an actual person, we're now going to go to an avatar and have the avatar sing, and that's going to be marketed or whatsoever it is. So given that Leadapreneur has avatar at its core, we use avatar in our programs. What do you have to say about Korea going into avatar musical career and Leadapreneur having its own avatars as well?
Yeah, it's a fascinating idea, right? And I think this is really at the beginning of a whole new age rather than just a little phenomena, right? And so in principle, an avatar is a representative of something else, right? So that's really, it's the embodiment of another. So my avatar of me, for example, as a warrior, is me embodying the warrior spirit and going out there and presenting that. But it comes from me. So what is the avatar of an AI representing? Does that mean it recognizes the AI as a legitimate entity? Is it a self? Is it, or if it's not, then is it an avatar or is it the AI itself? And that might seem at first like a fun play on words, but I think there's actually very profound implications there, because you're going to start getting into what is the AI, right? Because can the AI have a concert in New York and Tokyo and London and Singapore at the same time? Does that count? Does that not count? Where does the value lie? We were also meeting, our artists today, weren't we? And we're talking about AI creating art, and that's very clearly going to happen. And we were talking about how modernism really arrived with the arrival of the camera, replacing the traditional work of the artist. And I think we're going to see that again, and not just in visual art, music as well, right? Musical DJs, AI-powered DJs could probably host a pretty good party, quite frankly. And if you just, millions, maybe tens of millions of people are delighted by the Discovery playlist. Spotify Discover playlist every week. That's AI generated DJ for you. So we're already there. And it's also interesting that by going down these paths, you can explore, if you want to get to know someone, look at their Spotify playlist. What are the songs they play the most? If you're playing sad songs, you're probably sad. If you're playing happy songs, you're probably happy. If you're playing gym songs, you can get a real insight into people's lives. So if these avatars, it's not just the representation of probably an anime-like character. It's what's the belief of what this character represents, right? Is it a living being? Is it a real entity? Is it something that has rights? If it's owned, does that make it a slave, right? We're going to encounter all these really, really difficult questions. And so as part of that, so if you're supporting an avatar, but that avatar is owned by the music industry, does that mean you're supporting a slave for the music industry? Or does that mean you're supporting technological breakthroughs? I don't know the answer to these questions, but I think it's going to start time. And so it's a brave new world. My initial approach was to kind of poo-poo it and be like more of an old man, be like, oh no, that will never take off. But then I'm not that young anymore. I'm in my mid-30s, and it's become very clear to me that I'm not as youthful as I once was, and I'm not as down with the kids, and I'm aware of what trends that in the past seemed so obvious to me, but now they don't. Right? I don't use TikTok, but obviously a lot of people do. So let's just give a tiny example there, and I think it will find its niche. But I think what we are kind of doing there is we're letting the genie out of the bottle, and that there will be a much bigger conversations emerging out of that will really challenge us and then invite us, I think, maybe to that question again of expanding our consciousness. I think one of the defining questions of this century, especially later on, after the 2050, will be what are the rights of an AI? Is it real consciousness? Are those real entities? Or are they not? And I suspect we're going to discover some things in there that we can't even imagine. In a similar way that we're now in 2022, right? Imagine being in 1922. Planes have just arrived, right? They've only been around a decade. Cars have barely been around a decade. electrification is only just arriving in the world, barely, right? And you think you've kind of seen it all, right? And then imagine 100 years later, we are now in 2022, and there's technologies here that you would have been mind-blowing for people, right? Literally would explode your brains, right? And today we're moving at a pace that's even faster. So where we will be in 100 years time from now is extraordinary. And so seeing these little things and following an AI as your music artist and cheering her on the stage seems like a really cool thing to do. But imagine explaining that to someone 100 years ago. It would be bonkers, right? You couldn't even do it. And so where might that take us to? I think it's a really exciting age, but kind of to look back into it, I do think this avatar concept is going to become very, very important for us. It's going to be our way of mediating our presence in the digital space. And I'm not, there's many people who are already saying this, and there's already, especially with Web3, there's some really advanced developments around avatar creation and recognition of this principle, right? Your avatar is blockchain based, it's tied, connected to your crypto wallet. And you know, who knows, maybe, I mean, if an avatar based on AI can sing and dance, could they innovate? Right? It's also a skill set. So one might say it's a more complex and advanced skill set, but you could break it down, or at least they could get some way towards it, right? Maybe they don't have to sing and perform, but maybe they don't have to create the whole innovation, but maybe they could do some research. Maybe they could do some basic ideation, right? And so if I was able to sort of multiply myself and my avatars, could I be innovating at different companies? So there's Jan, and then Jan has his 5 avatars, for example, and maybe I need avatar licenses. Maybe because that's what I'm allowed to do. Yeah, I think it's just going to get wild. Like it's like I always my advice to journalists: you ain't seen nothing yet. Like we think this is crazy. It's really just warming up. We're going to see some phenomenally important stuff, phenomenally amazing stuff, also some very sad stuff. And I think that's why it's so important to have leadapreneurs. I believe like you need to have people who can keep building the better world, and use the technology that we're developing through Industry 4.0 for good rather than for bad.
Well, it is interesting. I mean, it was fun when you were talking about how if we could produce different AIs of ourselves and then going out and then, you know, doing things that probably would do like tens of yarns, right? That would be something of a size. So as an ending
question. I just wanted to touch. So one of my favorite quotes, there's a famous Isaac Asimov book called I, Robot, which was made into a film with Will Smith. And in it, he's sort of, you know, dealing with an AI uprising. I won't spoil the plot, but one of the moments is the character challenges an AI robot and says, you know, you can't write a symphony. You don't know what it's like to feel, right? And the robot looks back at him and says, can you? And I just thought that was an excellent point because I can't write a symphony, right? So me pretending that I'm so much better than an AI and a robot because I refer to these abstract principles. But I think what we're going to see, I think we're already seeing in the only advances, AI is already quite equivalent to us in many ways. And so how we navigate that and recognize this other and indeed get to know ourselves is going to be really and create some interesting times. Yes, I just wanted to share that with you, Hannah. So I thought it was an interesting perspective.
But I think to me, it is wrong to think that we are superior than AI, because if you take, for example, Jan, as you or the knowledge that you have, I mean, I know you're reading all these interesting books about AI, and currently you're reading one, right? Probably you could share a little bit about that. So if you take the knowledge that you have and you add more people to it, let's just add like Elon Musk knowledge to yours and like so many other intelligent people, add all of that into one AI, that's going to be one super powerful AI. And I don't think one person can compete with that. So to me, I think AI is going to be superior than the human brain or the human capabilities.
I mean, that sounds in theory principle. So that might be, I think a way to think about that is like saying, if we just stick lots of car engines together, we'll have a really powerful car. And to some extent it works, but what starts to happen is that there are other intangibles that we overlook, like coordinating all that intelligence, right? And a fundamental aspect of intelligence is to subdivide it into knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Knowledge is knowing what something is, so you know lots of things, right? But understanding is about causality. How do you actually do it? So you might know about digital marketing, for example, but do you understand how to actually digitally market this mouse, for example, right? This mouse, and how to sell it in the Malaysian market? That's a completely different matter, right? And then wisdom is about judgment, which can only be built through experience. It cannot be learned any other way. And so let's say you had this super intelligence, but does it have the understanding and wisdom to succeed? And indeed, what is its success? Because part of the challenge of the identity is to articulate a meaningful goal. What would this super entity actually care about? Is it, and because that will sort of part of be the reinforcement mechanism for defining its existence. Does it care about making money? Does it care about reaching the stars? Does it care about solving climate change?
Does it have to care? Does it have to care if you're going to give it a task and give the task, then does it have to care? It's an AI.
Well, that will, of course, is something that we will have to discover. So I can only speculate about it. But what I have worked on is defining care in terms of information theory. So from what I have discovered or researched, identified, is that care is the mechanism by which the self locates itself in the world. It's what allows you to realize who I am, why I'm here, and what I want to achieve. And once you start to complexify identity to a certain threshold, you generate a level of awareness where those questions are important. In the previous generations, it wasn't important to know the meaning of your life and all these questions. It's only our generation really that starts to embrace that, and that's because a certain complexification has taken place. So if we don't have an entity that cares, then what is its purpose? Just to follow the orders that it's told. Okay, so it follows its orders, but it has to care about its orders, right? Because what happens is when you follow your strict program, your strict logic, it only works to a certain extent. At some point, you need to have autonomy. You need to have independent thinking. And that's where care needs to come in. And that's a big challenge, for example, in robotics, because the problem is that robots don't care. They don't care about their own life, and that's why they die. A robot will just walk to the edge of a cliff and fall off and die, or just destroy itself, should we say. Whereas most humans at least, would be a lot more cautious about approaching that cliff and certainly would not jump over it, right? Because they're afraid of death. Why are they afraid of death? Because they care about being alive. So care is extremely important. It's like, I think of it as like gravity, but for information. That the more you care about something, it pulls things towards you, makes reality real. And if you don't care, that's fine, but then you have no reality. And the reality itself disintegrates. So if we have these entities that don't care, they will simply be lost and will become self-destructive. And I think that, and then in the end, that's what will lead to them expiring. So caring is not, from an information perspective, care is necessary for reinforcing the self. If you don't care, you will disintegrate. And I think that's a lot of what the challenges that we're facing today, is that we don't care. And when I say care, I mean it's care is the vehicle through which the self articulates itself into the world. I care about Leadapreneur, so I consciously bring myself forth into Leadapreneur. I'm here and now. I'm not away pretending to be somewhere else. I'm not quiet quitting and all these things. That's why those terms are very dangerous, because yes, you can quiet quit and disengage, but you are what you care about. So if you don't care, you aren't becoming anything at all. You literally just disintegrate your identity. And this is why it's so dangerous today to not care, because you just get lost. And that, I think, becomes very dangerous, because we risk depression, we risk hopelessness, we risk alienation, and we fall apart. And I think many of us all face those challenges. I face those challenges too. And the answer is to care, basically. The short answer is you need to care. But what it is that you care about, well, that's what you need to figure out for yourself. And the answer for humans lies in the heart. It's listening to the heart. Right? People often ask me, but I don't know what I care about. And I think that may well be true, but it's not because it doesn't exist. It's because you haven't listened to your heart and haven't really respected the heart and what it's telling you and gone out and acted on it. Too often we're overeducated in the mind, and we believe we are our mind, but we're not. And so I think that's part of, as humans engage with AI, there are just many different forms of intelligence that come about that are not just about processing, should we say, digital information. Believe it or not, but most life does not occur on the internet, right? There's spiritual intelligence, there's emotional intelligence, there's relationship intelligence, there's physical intelligence, there's all these other factors. And so I think we're going to see that those will become more powerful and more important. I personally suspect in the end where we're going to really go is a much more spiritual approach to our work, and realizing that we are here for a purpose, and that when we work on what we believe in, we will have a strong sense of purpose. We will be in flow, as Csikszentmihalyi might say, and we'll be happy and healthy by doing so, which is good.
The important takeaway from this message, Jan, is about care is important to reinforce oneself, right? And well, I think that would be a good ending note to this podcast. But I also want to ask one question. When someone care, right? So when you, Jan, you're caring, for example, Leadapreneur, and you're on this journey, do you think that when you care for something, it makes you alone? Like you're alone on this journey because no one else can match the amount of care you have for something particular. So if I care about building my better world, there's no one else that can match it or have similar, will not be on that similar sort of vibe, on that similar sort of energy. So do you think when we care about something, or when we care too much, we are then alone on a particular journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be clear, the way I say it, like, I am what I care about. Like, we are what we care about. And the way of money, time, and effort, or repetition, to see what someone really cares about, see where they spend their time, see where they spend their money, and how many repetitions, like, for example, going to the gym, how many times you repeat that activity, right? Because reality is repetition. So when you do that, that is who you are actually being, not your delusional self or what you think you are, but look at the hard numbers of time, money, and repetition, and you will see who you really are being, right? As in terms of caring. In terms of going on the journey alone, we're never alone. Humans are never alone. Humans are, by definition, a social species. And I think that's one of the great illusions that we've created for ourselves in Industry 3.0, this idea of the nuclear self or the nuclear family. Humans only exist in their social matrix of being with others. A child raised without humans does not achieve consciousness. We know this. We've seen this in children who are raised by animals because they got lost in the forest, for example, things like that. So if there's that sense of aloneness, it's because we have chosen to make ourselves lonely. And now there might be reasons for that. Maybe you want to go very, very far. I, for example, felt times great loneliness when I was researching some of the esoteric sciences that power Leadapreneur, cybernetics, complexity leadership. It was clear to me that that was a journey I needed to do on my own because that no one was going to come with me. So it's on me to do that, right? So that's what I care about. That's why I put my money, time, and effort into. But then I also can work with people who share a common spirit, a common purpose, who care about the same thing, right? I think you and I both care about Leadapreneur and its success. And so we both invest our time, our money, and our effort into it, right? So that's how we build networks of care. And that's really what community is about. True community is about bringing people together with a common heart purpose. And that's why, again, why I emphasize the heart. It's not just a clever idea in your head. It's something you feel in your heart, something that you believe is in and of itself worthy and good and true.
All right, Jan. So on this note, I would like to end the podcast. So thank you so much for your time and your insights. And I hope our listeners here today are able to get some takeaways from this podcast. So thank you for your time, and I shall see you next week. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Leadapreneurs YouTube channel to get your weekly updates.